What if the past wasn't as clear as we thought? Archaeologists often uncover everyday objects, but sometimes they find baffling mysteries that challenge everything we know. From ancient stories of lost cities, mysterious graves, and forgotten civilizations, these enigmatic artifacts hold secrets waiting to be uncovered. Join us as we explore history's most puzzling archaeological mysteries. Painted figures in a 100-year-old mummy's coffin, Perth, Scotland. The moment conservators at Perth Museum lifted the mummy of Tuck-RHB out of her coffin after more than a century, a chilling secret was revealed beneath, a place that no one had ever dared to look at. As the fragile remains were gently removed, the underside of the coffin trough unveiled painted figures hidden from human eyes for almost 3,000 years. The tension was palpable. Ancient dust stirred, as if the coffin itself breathed unease into the air. Helena and Richard Jaeschke, skilled conservators overseeing the project, stared in disbelief at the intricate figures depicting the goddess Amentet, known as the She of the West, painted on both the internal and external bases. This ethereal deity, who welcomed the dead to the afterlife, was depicted in a red dress, arms outstretched, standing on a platform supported by a pole. The eerie symmetry of the paintings suggested a ritualistic purpose, but the paintings were incomplete. The goddess's feet and head were erased by time, or perhaps something more sinister. Local eyewitness accounts from the team recalled a strange chill in the room as the paintwork emerged, as though the presence of the ancient priestess still lingered, watching. Scientific investigation followed swiftly. CT scans and X-rays taken years earlier had already shown the mummy's battered condition. Her bones fractured and dislocated, her chest violently torn, injuries consistent with ancient grave robbers desperately searching for hidden amulets. The resin-covered bandages that had once preserved her were now brittle and fragile. Yet, when conservators analyzed the coffin's painted figures with non-invasive spectroscopy, they uncovered pigment compositions dating back to the late period of Egyptian history, around 760 to 525 BC. Confirming the painting's authenticity. Further forensic soil analyses from inside the trough revealed microscopic remains of plants and insects, hinting at the coffin's original environment and tomb conditions. Despite advanced imaging and chemical tests, no explanation emerged for the selective damage to the goddess's depiction, an eerie mystery defying even the most sophisticated archaeological tools. But then, an unexplained phenomenon added another layer to the enigma. During late-night conservation sessions, staff reported flickering shadows near the mummy's display, strange noises barely audible, like whispered prayers carried on a cold breeze. Cameras set up to monitor the room caught inexplicable blurs crossing the coffin. Helena, the lead conservator, confessed feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, a weight pressing on her chest, as if the ancient dead were unsettled by their disturbance. No electrical faults or environmental causes were found to explain these events, deepening the mystery. Even as Tuck-RHB was carefully restored for public exhibition, the lingering dread of this mysterious painted coffin clung to it like a spectral veil. Why were these goddess figures hidden beneath the coffin, out of sight, but preserved for millennia? Was the destruction of parts of Amentet's image symbolic, or a warning? Could the restless spirit of the priestess still guard her secrets beneath the layers of resin, paint, and time? Visitors who have glimpsed the mummy say a shiver runs down their spine, an inexplicable unease that grows with every stare. As the museum's lights dim and silence falls, the unanswered questions remain, haunting the halls of Perth as the ancient priestess watches still unseen. 4 ancient Amazonian female skeletons, Ostrogotsky District, Russia. The sound of shattered silence tore through the Devitsa V burial mound as archaeologists pried open a 2,500-year-old tomb in Russia's Ostrogotsky district. Inside, the bones of 4 women lay still, silent witnesses to a forgotten saga long buried beneath clay and oak. But it wasn't just their skeletal remains that sent chills down the spines of the excavation team. It was the unmistakable evidence that these were no ordinary women, but warriors, real-life Amazons, long shrouded in myth. The eldest skeleton, aged between 45 and 50, wore an exquisite gold headdress, a rare calathos, perfectly preserved on her skull, its intricate designs glinting faintly even after centuries. Lying beside her were iron arrowheads, an iron dagger, and horse harness elements, symbols of a fierce nomadic elite that defied centuries of gender assumptions. Another was found in a horseman's position, clutching two spears and accompanied by a bronze mirror and a glass-beaded bracelet, relics that whispered of both battle and femininity intertwined. The youngest, a mere girl of 12 or 13, was buried with equal honor, her presence a haunting testament to generations of women trained and buried as warriors. Valery Giliev, head of the Dawn expedition, had uncovered an unprecedented burial for Scythian Amazons from different stages of life, entombed together in a clay and oak block tomb dating back to the 4th century BC. This discovery marked the first time such a multi-generational Amazon burial had been found. Items strewn across the tomb floor, over 30 iron arrowheads, animal bones, horse tack, knives, and vessels, added weight to the eerie scene. These women were more than fighters. They were a clan, a matriarchal force that dominated a landscape usually written by men. Yet, the scientific investigation only deepened the mystery. The grave had been disturbed by ancient robbers, yet the Amazon women's regalia and weapons remained perilously preserved, as if protected by unseen hands. The skeletal remains showed evidence of battle wounds, including a bronze arrowhead embedded near the knee of one warrior, a chilling reminder of violent conflict. Researchers using radiocarbon dating and metallurgical analysis confirmed an astonishing conclusion. These women were genuine Scythian warriors, living and dying centuries before Homer sang the legends of the Amazons. But the most unsettling discovery came not from science, but from the silence that followed. Local workers reported strange occurrences, footsteps in the empty excavation tents, whispered voices caressing the night wind, and fleeting shadows that defied explanation. Some research staff admitted an overwhelming, almost suffocating sense of dread while working near the graves, as if the spirits of these fierce Amazons still guarded their resting place, unwilling to relinquish their secrets. Questions lingered as the burial site was sealed once more. Why were women warriors buried with such honor and weaponry, defying the male-dominated warrior narrative? Did their clan represent a larger, lost matriarchy that ruled the Siberian steppes? And more haunting, what ancient force still pulses through the soil, a whisper of peril awaiting those who dare disturb these eternal guardians? The tomb remains a silent sentinel beneath the Russian earth, the painted spears and golden headdress frozen in time. The presence of these Amazon women still looms, a chilling riddle entwined in iron and bone, daring us to unravel the shadowed truth of who these warriors truly were, and what echoes their defiant souls cast across millennia. Two ancient Greek royal tombs, Pylos, southern Greece. As the excavation team in Pylos, southern Greece, chipped away at layers of dense rubble, the first glimmer of gold flickered beneath the debris. A gold leaf so thin it had once lined the very floors of a royal tomb, hidden for 3,500 years. The dome-shaped roof of the Tholos tomb had long collapsed, sealing the chamber beneath tons of earth and stone, untouched by grave robbers. But now, after months of painstaking excavation, the secrets of two royal tombs began to emerge, each a silent testament to Bronze Age power and mystery. Archaeologist Sharon R. Stocker recalled the moment the golden seal ring surfaced, an exquisite symbol engraved with two bulls flanked by sheaves of barley, a scene unseen before in Minoan or Mycenaean art. The image spoke not only of wealth, but of agricultural foundations and ritual symbolism. Nearby, a gold pendant bearing the likeness of the ancient Egyptian goddess Hathor, protector of the dead, gleamed eerily under torchlight, suggesting far-reaching trade links between Pylos and Egypt, long before Homer's epics immortalized the region. The tension in the air thickened as more objects were revealed, amethyst beads sourced from Egypt, Baltic amber, and bronze weapons, all marking these tombs as the resting places of Pylos's most elite. Jack L. Davis, head of classics at the University of Cincinnati, led the scientific probe into the tombs. Through photogrammetry and digital mapping, The team reconstructed the beehive-shaped tombs, each once soaring nearly 15 meters high. Though the roofs had crumbled, impressions of gold leaf remained on walls and floors, a dead giveaway to the wealth enshrined here. Radiocarbon dating placed the burials firmly in the late Bronze Age, around 1450 BCE, a time when the Mycenaean civilization was emerging as a Mediterranean superpower. The artifacts hinted at a fusion of cultures, Greek, Minoan, and Egyptian, with complex trade and power networks. Yet scientific scrutiny only deepened the mystery. Despite the tomb's grandeur, archaeologists found evidence of later disturbances, scratches on valuable goods, and scattered human remains, suggesting these royal mausoleums had been violated, perhaps in violent dynastic struggles. The identities of those buried remain unknown, their titles and deeds lost to time. Was one of these tombs the resting place of a sovereign linked to King Nestor, whose palace loomed nearby and whose name echoes through Homer's Odyssey? Or had another royal lineage, obscured by millennia, been erased from history? Unexplainable events shrouded the excavations in eerie twilight. Several team members recounted fleeting sensations, an oppressive cold descending upon the site as dusk fell, whispers of wind simulating voices just beyond hearing, and shadowy figures glimpsed in peripheral vision when no one else was near. Some dismissed these as fatigue or imagination, but others confessed to a profound unease, as if the tombs themselves guarded their secrets jealously. Night cameras caught brief flickers within the eerie silence of the archaeological camp, belying the certainty that these tombs were more than just silent stone and gold. Now, the grand tombs stand as graves and riddles, their gold fragile yet undeniable proof of a civilization's peak and its shadowed fall. The unanswered questions linger relentlessly. Who were these royals whose wealth rivaled that of distant Egypt? What deadly intrigues tore through Mycenaean palace? And above all, why did the tombs remain so fiercely untouched by thieves, save for enigmatic intruders whose marks haunt the archaeological record? The weight of ages presses down, and with every uncovered artifact, the past whispers darker, deeper secrets still to be revealed beneath the Peloponnesian soil. 800 mammoth bones, Tultepec, Mexico. The excavator bucket bit into the earth, not for an airport foundation, but for a new landfill. 6 meters down, the roar of the machine suddenly ceased, replaced by the chilling, guttural sound of metal scraping against something hard and unyielding. It was the distinct curve of a tusk, followed by the enormous, calcified dome of a skull, then another, and another, until the ground itself seemed to groan under the sheer weight of what lay beneath. Over 800 bones from at least 14 mammoths, trapped in a colossal, ancient grave in Tultepec, Mexico. Luis Cordova Bardas, leading the excavation, stood transfixed. This wasn't merely a paleontological find. This was a slaughterhouse, 15,000 years in the making. Among the jumbled remains, a massive mammoth skull bore the unmistakable mark of a spear wound. Ribs, vertebrae, humeri, many showed signs that ancient hunters had meticulously stripped nearly every ounce of flesh, even utilizing bones as tools. This wasn't a natural disaster. It was a deliberate, brutal hunt on an unprecedented scale. The scientific investigation that followed peeled back layers of mud and time. Non-invasive techniques, including detailed photogrammetry and 3D modeling, meticulously mapped the mammoth megasite, revealing 2 pits, each an astonishing 82 feet in diameter with almost 90-degree walls, dug with chilling precision. Researchers theorized these were the world's first documented human-built mammoth traps, used for an estimated 500 years. Early humans, perhaps 20 to 30 hunters, would have used burning torches and branches to panic individual mammoths, separating them from their herds and driving the terrified giants into these inescapable earthen prisons. Geologists confirmed the area was once a shallow lake system during the late Pleistocene period, making it a natural bottleneck for these colossal creatures, each weighing up to 10 tons. Yet, the sheer number of remains, the evidence of targeted hunting, and the scale of the pits transformed previous understanding. Early humans weren't just opportunistic scavengers, they were cunning, organized predators. But even with the scientific explanations, the site exerted an unsettling, inexplicable grip. Workers on the modern landfill project, far removed from the archaeological team, reported strange, guttural sounds emanating from the deep pit at night, like distressed echoes of the ancient stampede. Some described an overwhelming sense of dread, a chilling air that lingered even after the sun had warmed the ground, as if the sheer suffering of the trapped beasts had imbued the very soil with a pervasive unease. There were whispers among the locals of a lingering, heavy silence that descended upon the area after the discovery, a quiet that felt less like peace and more like a held breath. The mammoth bone field of Tultepec remains an open wound in the earth, a monument to a terrifying, forgotten chapter of human ingenuity and primal violence. The chilling questions reverberate through the silent pits. What unspeakable desperation drove early humans to engineer such deadly traps? What horrors did these behemoths endure in their final moments, helplessly ensnared, as their hunters closed in? And does the ghostly resonance of their ancient demise still haunt this scarred landscape, a silent testament to a hunt that reshaped the understanding of human-mammoth interaction? The 800 bones of Tultepec are not merely fossils. They are silent screams, a lingering dread of a forgotten past that continues to echo under the Mexican sun. 20 sealed coffins, Luxor, Egypt. The moment the excavation team pried open the ancient tomb in the Al-Asasif necropolis near Luxor, a suffocating silence seemed to swell, as if the very air held its breath. Beneath layers of earth and stone, 20 sealed wooden coffins lay stacked meticulously in 2 layers, their vividly painted surfaces shimmering in the flickering torchlight. The colors, deep reds, blacks, greens, and whites, were astonishingly well preserved for coffins more than 2,300 years old, as if the ancient artisans had conjured them yesterday. But the real tension loomed in what still remained inside. Untouched mummies and undiscovered secrets, waiting centuries for this moment to be disturbed. Eyewitnesses from the dig described an eerie feeling as the last coffin lids creaked open, an inexplicable coldness that rushed out in waves, stealing warmth and stealing breath. Team members reported a strange sensation of being watched, while faint whispers seemed to echo just beyond hearing distance. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most renowned archaeologist, remarked on the rarity of finding so many intact, sealed coffins together. It's almost as if these nobles and priests were deliberately preserved from the world, their stories locked away in silence. Yet when the first glimpses of the delicate hieroglyphics and funerary prayers on the coffins revealed cryptic inscriptions, a haunting image emerged. These were not just tombs, but messages from the dead, sent across millennia. Scientific investigation quickly delved deeper. Radiocarbon dating placed the coffins primarily in Egypt's late period, 664 to 332 BC, though some bore stylistic elements hinting at influence from the illustrious 18th dynasty, a golden age of pharaohs such as Hatshepsut and Tutankhamun. Using advanced imaging and pigment analysis, researchers confirmed the natural minerals in the coffin paint had resisted fading, revealing funerary symbolism designed to protect the deceased in the afterlife. Intriguingly, the discovery was adjacent to a newly uncovered sprawling industrial zone of 30 workshops where artisans crafted funerary goods, pottery, gold artifacts, faience beads, indicating these coffins emerged from a sophisticated production line devoted to death rites. Yet, despite powerful X-rays and chemical scans, some coffin inscriptions refused full translation, hinting at lost dialects or deliberately coded prayers, deepening the mystery. But then strange, unexplainable phenomena shrouded the discovery. During nights near the site, guards and archaeologists reported shadows darting across empty corridors, untraceable murmurs, and sudden drops in temperature. One camera captured a faint, indistinct figure seeming to pause just beyond the tomb entrance before vanishing. Modern science can map chambers and date relics, but none explain why many working late hours felt an oppressive weight, as though ancient forces resisted their intrusion. Could it be the restless souls of the noble dead, still bound by unbroken oaths, guarding their final sanctuary from profane disturbance? The lingering dread remains palpable even now. As the tomb's contents are carefully catalogued and prepared for public unveiling, Questions erupt in the minds of all who witnessed this awe. Why were these nobles entombed in such extraordinary numbers, their coffins sealed so perfectly? What secrets do the cryptic inscriptions hide? Royal conspiracies, forbidden knowledge, or divine curses? And more chillingly, are these sealed coffins truly closed? Or is something ancient and watchful stirring beneath these vividly painted lids, waiting silently for the end of time near Luxor's twilight sands? Sir John Franklin Expedition Bones, Canadian Arctic. The icebound silence stretched endlessly over King William Island when archaeologists unearthed human bones, the eerie remnants of the vanished men from Sir John Franklin's doomed Arctic expedition. These were not just any remains, but the broken skeletons of 129 officers and sailors who vanished into the frozen void after their two ships, Erebus and Terror, became trapped in sea ice in 1846. The tension hit its peak when forensic experts revealed gruesome cut marks carved into the bones, chilling evidence that desperation drove this doomed crew to cannibalism in the Arctic wasteland. Eyewitness testimony came from Inuit hunters as early as the 1850s, who spoke of ragged white men plagued by starvation and madness, picking over bones and fighting for survival. Initially dismissed as myth, these chilling accounts gained cold, hard confirmation decades later. Archaeological teams led by Owen Beatty in the 1980s recovered remains from the crew's hastily prepared graves on Beechy Island. The bones bore telltale signs. Knife and saw marks etched deep into joints and bones, consistent with butchering, painting a grim picture of men cutting flesh from their fallen comrades just to endure the merciless Arctic winter. Scientific investigations have since intensified. Recent DNA analyses have identified individual crew members, including Captain James Fitzjames, one of the final leaders after Franklin's death in June 1847. Radiocarbon dating, forensic bone chemistry, and isotope studies have outlined the slow decline of the men, victims of hypothermia, scurvy, starvation, and crippling lead poisoning, likely from the very tinned food Kens meant to sustain them. Lead levels in bones eclipsed those found in contemporaries, turning trusted supplies lethal. Modern imaging techniques revealed defects and trauma consistent with harsh cold and brutal exertion, while chemical residues showed zinc deficiency, further weakening them. Yet, despite all this science, nothing fully explains how such a meticulously planned expedition dissolved into starvation, madness, and death. Stranger still were the odd phenomena reported near the excavation sites decades later. Teams working in the Arctic recounted an oppressive atmosphere around the graves, an unshakable weight of despair. Some felt phantom chills and heard whispers carried on the howling Arctic winds, fleeting glimpses of spectral figures moving just beyond camp lights. Cameras caught anomalies, shadows or glints without source inside the frozen tundra's loneliness. Could these be restless souls bound eternally to their icy grave? Are the bones themselves haunted by the dread of starvation and betrayal? The unanswered questions burn darker than the polar night. How did the expedition, equipped with supplies for 3 years, starve in the first place? Did lead poisoning accelerate madness, or merely compound it? What agonizing choices did men face on that agonizing march across sea ice after abandoning their frozen ships? And what secrets remain buried beneath the Arctic ice, of sacrifice, suffering, and human limits on the brink of survival? The bones recovered from Sir John Franklin's last voyage are more than relics. They are grim testimonies etched in bone and frozen earth, whispers of a tragic odyssey swallowed by Arctic ice and time, forever shadowed by cold and unanswered sorrow. Alien skulls, Sonoma, Mexico. The moment archaeologists in Sonora, Mexico, unearthed a burial site known as El Cementerio, tension surged like a whispered secret long buried. Beneath the dusty soil, 25 human skulls lay still, but 13 of these were unlike any other, elongated, sharply pointed at the back, their unnatural shapes immediately evoking eerie comparisons to alien beings. The air thickened with mystery. These were neither myths nor legends, but physical remains, disturbing and enigmatic, challenging everything known about ancient Mesoamerican burial customs. An eyewitness account came from Cristina Garcia Moreno, an archaeologist with Arizona State University, who led the analysis. She recalled the surreal moment when the skulls were first examined. These were human remains, but their shapes defied usual human anatomy. The elongated crania belonged mostly to children, some as young as 5 months, and the cemetery dated from 945 AD to 1308 AD. Local workers who uncovered the site in 1999 had immediately sensed something odd about these burials. But even seasoned researchers were unsettled by the sheer number of deformed skulls clustered in one place. Rather than evidence of extraterrestrial visitors, Moreno noted a chilling cultural practice, a ritual known as cranial deformation, where infants' skulls were intentionally reshaped by binding them between wooden boards, a forceful process outlasting the fragility of childhood. Scientific investigations soon confirmed the bones' human origin, dated to about 1,000 years ago, firmly placing these individuals in the Hispanic cultural sphere of northern Mexico. Chemical analyses and CT scans revealed no signs of disease or trauma that could explain the skull shapes. Instead, meticulous physical pressure had reshaped their skulls over years. Experts connected this cranial deformation to social stratification or group identity, marking elites or distinct clans within the tribe. Yet, the fundamental question remained, a haunting silence. Why did this group embrace such a relentless and invasive modification, especially on children? The unexplained deepened when the site revealed mutilated teeth in 5 skulls, teeth ground down into unnatural patterns, an intricate, unnerving sign of ritualistic body modification rarely seen in this region before. This, combined with the high child mortality and the strange dominance of elongated heads, sent ripples of unease through the scientific community. Could such practices have contributed to early death? Or were these children sacrificed, or otherwise victims of a cultural rite we can no longer fully grasp? During late-night hours at the dig site, several researchers reported inexplicable sensations, cold drafts sweeping through sealed chambers, the faint whisper of voices caught in the wind, shadows flickering where no one stood. Security cameras caught fleeting figures or illogical light anomalies, unexplainable by equipment malfunction. Some team members described a creeping dread, a sensation as if the spirits of these ancient children still roamed, bound by the very boards that shaped their skulls. Whether imagined or real, such eerie phenomena posed chilling reminders that beneath the earth lie not only bones but restless histories refusing to rest quietly. The mystery endures in the desert sands of Sonora. What ancient beliefs forged this brutal rite of passage? Why bind the minds and identities of the young so tightly in wood and cloth? Were these skulls revered symbols of power, or grim testaments to suffering sacrificed for social order? And in the shadows of El Cementerio, do the elongated forms hold whispers of voices that still reach across a millennium? The cries of children and ancestors carved not only in bone, but an endless, haunting enigma? A nun buried face down, Oxford, England. Unearthed beneath the Norman earth of Littlemore Priory near Oxford, the body of a medieval nun lay face down, an ominous anomaly among the hallowed graves of the devout. The chilling moment archaeologists peeled back centuries was laden with dread. This burial defied custom, sparking whispers of sin, shame, and dark secrets long buried beneath the sacred soil. Paul Murray, lead archaeologist from John Moore Heritage Services, recounted the stark tension as the prone skeleton emerged from the earth. The woman was young, likely no older than 40, her body deliberately laid face down at the center of a stone coffin's crossing, a position rarely afforded, often reserved to brand the dead as witches or sinners. Locals working the dig recalled an oppressive stillness, a cold, invisible weight pressing down as if the earth itself wished to silence forgotten transgressions. Nearby, the infant's bones interred long after, nestled hauntingly between her legs, cast a grim shadow over the woman's story, an unsettling hint at moral stain, scandal, or desperate penitence. Scientific inquiry probed the grave's mysteries relentlessly. Radiocarbon dating placed the burial between the 12th and 16th centuries, coinciding with the priory's turbulent existence from its foundation in 1110 to dissolution under Cardinal Wolsey in 1525. Osteological examination revealed no trauma on the woman's bones, no brutal execution, but rather an enigmatic social condemnation. The prone posture betrayed the medieval church's darkest judgments. Face-down burials marked those accused of witchcraft, sexual transgressions, or those deemed heretical. Historical records from the priory whisper of Prioress Catherine Wells, notorious for scandalous behavior and corrupt practices, painting a backdrop of sin and disorder. Yet whether this woman was truly a sinner or a victim of ecclesiastical justice remains unanswered. The unexplained deepened as workers reported eerie phenomena during twilight hours at the excavation site. Shadows flickered across empty trenches, and faint murmurs drifted with the cold Oxford breeze, voices too distant to discern, yet too persistent to ignore. Security footage captured fleeting, indistinct shapes near the burial ground, and team members sensed a prickle of dread that clung tightly as night fell over the priory ruins. Was it the restless spirit of the face-down nun, condemned to linger, trapped between worlds by the weight of her disgrace? Or a collective echo of centuries-old guilt emanating from the burial earth? Lingering questions claw at the edge of reason. Why was this enigmatic woman buried face down? Was it a forced punishment, a final act of penitence, or a fearful measure to prevent her from rising? What fate befell the infant buried beneath her? Child of scandal, victim of tragedy, or a gesture of forgotten remorse? Does the shadow of moral judgment still hover over Littlemore Priory, where piety and sin entwined in a deadly embrace? And most unsettling of all, does the earth here protect secrets darker than any historian can tell, tied forever to the silence of that face-down figure beneath Oxford's ancient soil? Neanderthal remains, Goyet, Belgium. The moment researchers ventured into the Troisième cavern of Belgium's Goyet caves, they unearthed a grisly secret that shattered peaceful silence. Bones of at least 5 Neanderthal individuals, fractured and carved as though torn apart, not by time, but by their own kind. These were no ordinary remains. The bones bore deep-cut marks, disarticulated joints, and crushing blows inflicted to extract marrow, ruthless traces of cannibalism frozen in stone for 40,000 years. Christian Cassius, who navigated those dark, tangled galleries, recalled the palpable unease as the team compared fractured Neanderthal bones to the butchered remains of reindeer and horses nearby. The violence inflicted on these bones was identical, he said. The teeth marks, cut edges, and percussion scars revealed a grim truth. Neanderthals didn't just hunt animals, they hunted and consumed each other. It was the largest discovery of cannibalized Neanderthal remains in Northern Europe, shattering prior assumptions that such acts were confined to southern populations like those seen in Spain and France. The tension gripped the team as they realized they were peering into desperate acts of survival or ritualistic horror etched bone deep. Scientific investigation under Dr. Helene Ruger's leadership peeled back layer after layer of this dark mystery. Using radiocarbon dating and detailed morphological studies, they confirmed these bones belonged to 4 adults or adolescents and a child, living between 45,500 and 40,500 years ago. Chemical and genetic analyses showed the Goyet Neanderthals were genetically close to others found across Europe, suggesting a small, interconnected population. The sheer number of bones cut, cracked, and reused as tools stunned experts. 5 human bones were shaped to sharpen stone implements, a form of cannibalism combined with tool-making so brutal it challenged old ideas of Neanderthal behavior. Yet the reasons behind these chilling acts remain elusive. Was the cannibalism purely driven by starvation in a harsh Ice Age environment? Or were there darker, ritualistic motivations, perhaps ceremonies involving consuming the dead to honor or absorb their strength? The cave's stillness echoes with unanswered questions as scientists debate motives, each bone carved with silent testimony to survival and despair. Unexplainable disturbances have shadowed the excavation too. Workers nearby reported sudden drops in temperature and strange noises, whispers of scraping and snapping that the wind carried through narrow gallery twists. Security cameras caught fleeting blurs where no living presence stood, as if restless spirits long denied peace stirred in the cold limestone. The brutal past lingers, the cave a silent witness to primal violence and tragedy. The Goyet Neanderthal remains are not just fossilized bones. They are bone-chilling echoes of an ancient struggle for life, death, and perhaps something more unfathomable. Beneath the Belgian hills, the fractured skeletons whisper a haunting puzzle. How far did Neanderthals go to survive the merciless Pleistocene? What rituals or emergencies drove them to break their own kind? And do these desperate acts leave behind a shadow, still restless, still watching, in the cold, echoing chambers of the Goyet Caves? The Curse of King Tut, Valley of the Kings, Egypt. The tension exploded the instant Howard Carter's team breached the sealed tomb of King Tutankhamun in November 1922. Beneath centuries of dust and silence, a hidden world awoke. Golden treasures glittering alongside the embalmed boy king himself, untouched for over 3,000 years. But that awe was swiftly eclipsed by a creeping dread as tragedy struck those connected to the discovery. Rumors ignited of a curse, an ancient vengeance unleashed on anyone who dared disturb the pharaoh's rest. The chilling eyewitness accounts began almost immediately. Carter's benefactor, Lord Carnarvon, died within months from a seemingly innocuous mosquito bite that became fatally infected after he accidentally cut it shaving. Locals whispered that a cobra, ancient symbol of divine wrath, crept near Carter's house the very day the tomb was opened, as if warning intruders to beware. Other unfortunate souls linked to the tomb's opening fell ill, met untimely deaths, or suffered mysterious misfortunes. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed from a fever, George J. Gould from an unexplained illness, and even Prince Ali Camel Bey, who was mysteriously murdered. These tragedies sparked wild speculation and a media frenzy so intense it rivaled any ancient tale. Scientists delved into the curse's truth and failed to find any ancient spell scrawled on tomb walls. No direct curse had ever been discovered. The closest thing was a magic brick, inscribed with a supernatural warning meant not to curse, but protect the tomb from robbers, declaring the desert would repel that one who would repel him with the desert flame, and guarding the sacred resting place with magical power. Radiocarbon dating and chemical analyses showed that the tomb itself was in remarkably good condition, likely safer inside than the hazardous environment outside. Critics argued Lord Carnarvon's death was tragically natural, a blood infection worsened by pre-existing health conditions rather than any supernatural cause. Furthermore, Carter himself lived another 17 years after the discovery. Yet the eerie, unexplained events clung like shadows to the excavation. Reports came of strange voices whispered in the night, flickering apparitions near the tomb entrance, and sudden chills sweeping the desert air where the tomb lay. Objects gifted from the tomb brought calamity. A mummified hand bearing a curse bracelet sent Sir Bruce Ingram's house aflame and then flooded after rebuilding. Even political figures associated indirectly, like Sir Lee Stack, Governor-General of Anglo-Egyptian Sudan, fell to violent deaths that locals attributed to the curse's reach. Whether by coincidence or spectral wrath, the string of misfortunes revived ancient fears and modern superstitions with unnerving persistence. The legacy of King Tut's curse remains suspended between myth and mystery. Was it merely media sensationalism fueled by coincidence, fear, and the mystique of ancient Egypt? Or did something darker truly awaken when tomb seals broke and the Boy King's eternal guard stirred? The questions endure. What secrets did Howard Carter's flashlight illuminate beyond gold and death? Were the deaths tragic but mundane, or the first flickers of an ancient, relentless vengeance? And does the Valley of the Kings still hold a silence broken only by whispered curses, waiting patiently for the next soul bold enough to disturb the eternal slumber of King Tut? Mutilated remains of people thought to be vampires, Gorzyca, Poland. The instant archaeologists broke ground in the quiet village of Gorzyca, a suffocating dread gripped the air. Beneath centuries of soil lay 3 mutilated corpses, bodies nailed to the ground with iron spikes piercing their spines, each buried deliberately face down or with heads wedged between stones. These weren't ordinary burials, but desperate, brutal rituals meant to stop something terrifying, the dead rising anew. The chilling truth struck hard. These were accused vampires, victims of medieval superstition and savage fear. Christoph Sosha of the Museum of Fortress Costerzen described the scene. Holes in the spines showed people had hammered nails to pin the corpses to the earth, preventing them from standing or walking again. One woman, her knees broken and posture twisted by kyphosis, a debilitating spinal deformity, was buried face down, the position a mark of fear and condemnation. A man believed to suffer the same bone condition lay likewise mutilated, while a third victim had her head lodged firmly between stones, a grim practice to crush any power of escape. Workers at the site spoke of an unnatural chill during excavation, as if the shadows of these restless souls lingered in mourning. Scientific investigation deepened the puzzle. Radiocarbon dating placed the burials squarely in the 13th and 14th centuries, a time when Eastern Europe was gripped by fear of the undead. Osteological analyses confirmed the individuals had medical conditions. Kyphosis caused hunched postures that would have seemed unnatural or monstrous to medieval villagers. Such deformities, alongside social ostracism and the mysterious appearance of decay, fueled accusations of vampirism. These people were stigmatized in life and violently silenced in death through grave mutilations, practices intended not just to bury but to imprison the feared revenants. Yet unanswered questions echo through history's gloom. Why were these individuals singled out for such savage interment? Was it merely superstition or social scapegoating against the sick and different? Could real diseases, misunderstood at the time, have fueled terror of the undead? More deeply, scholars wonder if these fearful rites reflected broader anxieties, the fragile boundaries between life and death, order and chaos in medieval societies consigned to darkness and uncertainty. Odd phenomena have circled the site since. Excavation team members reported shadowy figures glimpsed at dusk, sudden drops in temperature, and whispered voices borne faintly on the wind. Security footage caught flickers beyond the edge of camp lights, imperceptible but haunting nonetheless. Did these restless spirits, or the weight of centuries-old terror, still cling to the ground where they were cursed and crucified by nails? The mutilated remains of Gorzica's vampires are not just relics but grim testimonies of fear-inflicting violence on vulnerable lives, of desperate communities battling unseen horrors through bloodied soil and broken bones. Beneath the Polish earth lies a riddle of superstition and suffering, a shadowed chapter ripe with questions. What truly drove medieval villagers to nail corpses and wedge heads between stones? Were these dark rituals protection, punishment, or something worse? And in the restless twilight of forgotten graves, does the terror that marked these souls still whisper across the centuries, an unquiet curse beneath silent ground? Shackled skeletons, Athens, Greece. The discovery struck like a lightning bolt, shattering the historical calm of the Phaleron Delta and necropolis in Athens. Buried in a mass grave, 80 skeletons lay shackled, their wrists clamped in iron restraints, an eerie testament to a brutal, forgotten chapter in ancient Greek history. The tension was immediate, palpable. Who were these doomed souls? And what transgression or tragedy led to their swift, collective execution in the shadow of Athens' golden age? Archaeologist Stella Chrysolaki, head of the excavation, described the chilling moment the first shackle emerged from the earth. It was a horrifying sight. Their wrists were still bound, some hands still clasped together in death, she recounted. The individuals, all young men, lay in rows, meticulously aligned yet stripped of dignity, their fate sealed by a collective, violent end. Local eyewitnesses spoke of an unsettling quiet that fell over the site as more shackled remains surfaced, as if the very air absorbed the weight of ancient suffering. Some of the skulls bore signs of violent blows, hinting at a rapid, merciless execution. Scientific investigation immediately commenced. Radiocarbon dating placed their deaths between 675 and 650 BCE, a tumultuous period in Athens, marked by social unrest and political upheaval. This predates the reforms of Solon, a time when tyrannical rule and class struggle plagued the city-state. Dental analyses confirmed the men were young and relatively well-nourished, indicating they weren't slaves or impoverished outcasts. DNA analysis is ongoing, hoping to reveal familial ties or common origins. The iron shackles, primitive yet effective, offered a stark contrast to the emerging democratic ideals of Athens, forcing a reevaluation of its early legal and penal systems. Were they common criminals, captured pirates, or, the most chilling possibility, political prisoners, victims of a failed coup or tyrannical purge? The placement of the bodies, organized yet brutally dismissed, suggested a calculated act of state-sanctioned violence. Yet, despite extensive scientific scrutiny, an unsettling void persists around why these men met such a horrific end. No historical texts explicitly mention such a large-scale shackled execution during this period. Why were they executed in this manner, rather than banished or enslaved? The lack of elaborate burial rites suggests they were denied traditional honors, perhaps as a final act of humiliation or warning. Unexplained phenomena continued to plague the site. Workers reported a pervasive feeling of unease, a coldness that had nothing to do with the weather, especially near the mass grave. Security cameras occasionally captured fleeting, unexplained blips or shadowy movements in the periphery of the frame. Some archaeologists spoke of a profound sadness that seemed to emanate from the earth itself, as if the collective despair of the shackled dead still clung to the very air above the necropolis. The shackled skeletons of Phaleron remain an enduring, chilling riddle beneath the modern streets of Athens. Who were these 80 young men, condemned to die in iron chains before their city birthed democracy? What desperate power struggled for control in that shadowy era? And as the wind whispers through the ancient olive groves, does the silent agony of these forgotten victims still haunt the birthplace of Western civilization, a stark reminder that even in the pursuit of ideals, brutality often leaves its unforgiving mark? A perfectly preserved 2,600-year-old brain, near York, England. The moment the skull surfaced from the muddy pit in Heslington, near York, a ripple of astonishment and unease spread among the archaeologists. Inside that skull lay something utterly unexpected, an ancient, 2,600-year-old human brain, remarkably preserved against all odds. The tension gripped the team as they realized this was no ordinary find. It was the oldest and best-preserved brain ever discovered in Eurasia, offering a chilling glimpse into a brutal Iron Age death wrapped in mystery. Eyewitnesses to the excavation recall how the brain's fragile mass, no larger than 70 by 60 by 30 millimeters, was first spotted through the base of the skull. Rachel Cubitt, a finds officer who cleaned the skull, described a strange movement inside, an eerie reminder that this was once living tissue, now hardened and ancient. The man whose brain it was had died violently. Forensic analysis showed he had likely been hanged, then decapitated by a knife, with the decapitated skull immediately buried alone in a wet, anoxic clay pit. The rest of his body was nowhere to be found, fueling theories of ritual sacrifice or cruel execution. Local excavators spoke of a heavy silence as the skull and its uncanny contents were removed, as if the soil itself guarded its secret. Scientific inquiry scrambled to explain the near-impossible preservation. Brains typically liquefy rapidly after death, but here the tissue survived for millennia, shrunken to just 20% of its original size, yet still chemically intact, described by researchers as having the consistency of very old dried-up chocolate. Studies led by Dr. Axel Petzold at University College London revealed that tightly folded brain proteins, normally thought to break down quickly, had aggregated into unusually stable structures, effectively freezing the brain's microanatomy in time. The acidic, oxygen-free environment deep in the clay pit likely prevented the enzymes that typically digest brain tissue from activating, preserving delicate structures like the gyri and neural fibers. Despite incredible advances, a mysterious organic compound found replacing much of the original tissue still eludes full identification. Yet darker questions loom. Why was this man singled out for such a violent death, only to have his head buried alone with his brain intact? Was this a ritual killing, a sacrifice meant to satisfy ancient beliefs, or the execution of a condemned prisoner? The absence of his body and the special burial pit suggest deliberate, possibly sacred intent. Some researchers speculate a rare disease may have altered his brain, contributing unknowingly to the preservation, but no clear evidence confirms this. Unearthly whispers accompany the find's afterlife. Excavators and curators report a palpable tension when handling the specimen, a creeping sense of dread as if disturbed by the man's violent demise. The pit's saturated clay, the last resting place of a tortured soul, guards silence and shadows that defy explanation. The Heslington brain remains not just a scientific marvel, but a haunting echo of violence, of mystery, and of an Iron Age man whose death was cruel and whose mind, against the ravages of time, still lingers beneath York's earth. What grim stories lurk in those folds, forever sealed in a remnant of brain tissue that should long ago have vanished? And does the soil that preserved him also harbor secrets too ancient and dark to fully unveil? A pit filled with children's bones and severed limbs, Bergheim, France. The moment archaeologists broke the soil at Bergheim, eastern France, they uncovered a pit that sent chills racing down every spine. A grisly tableau of violence frozen in time, 6,000 years deep. At the bottom lay 7 severed human left arms, hacked off with savage precision, their hand bones deliberately broken into pieces, strewn across the earth as if discarded trophies or grim warning signs. Over these mangled limbs, the piled, disordered bodies of 2 men, 1 woman, for children, and a tiny infant skull lay dumped without care, victims of a brutal raid or bloody conflict that tore apart a Neolithic community. Fanny Chanel, the lead anthropologist from Antioch Archaeology, described the haunting scene. This pit is a powerful testimony to slaughter and mutilation beyond anything known from this era. Radiocarbon dating placed the massacre around 4000 BC, a time when humans were forging their first villages yet were already locked in deadly struggles. The shattered limbs at the pit's base were mostly detached left arms, severed cleanly by axes or sharp stone tools. Fingers broken and scattered, these were not random acts but systematic dismemberments, suggesting mutilation far beyond a simple death toll. The bodies above added another layer of horror. The victims included 4 children ranging from toddlers to adolescents, a scant infant less than a year old, and adults, all showing signs of violent death. Blunt force trauma on skulls, fractured bones, and severed limbs. Strikingly, the bones of those buried were mostly intact except for 1 man missing his left arm, raising terrifying questions. Did his arm fall to the pit's grim collection, or did it belong to others? The chaotic jumble of bodies tossed atop the severed limbs spoke of hurried disposal, a community shattered and buried in reckless fury rather than ceremonial mourning. Scientists probed the pit's secrets with modern forensic rigor. Chemical analysis of bones revealed no signs of disease. These deaths were caused by violence, a hypothesis supported by the intense trauma visible on the remains. The presence of a mussel shell jewelry piece, stone points, and animal bones, remnants of hares and pigs, nearby hinted that this was no ordinary grave, but one tied to conflict or a catastrophic raid. Archaeologist Bruno Balestin suggested this might be the earliest physical evidence of violent raids or inter-community warfare in Neolithic Europe. Yet unanswered questions gnaw relentlessly. Who were these victims? Farmers, strangers, or warriors? Why sever limbs and scatter them? A warning to enemies, a ritual act, or savage mutilation born of rage? Was the pit a repurposed storage silo, a desperate burial pit when no better place was available, or a deliberate charnel house of terror? And what ancient fury led children to share this gruesome fate, their tiny bones tangled amid adult carnage? Unexplainable echoes still haunt Bergheim. Archaeologists recall an oppressive silence during excavation, shadowy figures flickering just beyond camp lights, and a coldness that settled as if the earth itself mourns the massacre. The disturbed soil seems to hold on to a violent memory, anguish and terror woven into the layered clay. The Bergheim pit does not merely hold bones. It holds a stark, bone-chilling testament to human cruelty at the dawn of civilization. A ritual of horror, a brutal message fossilized in limbs and skulls, whispering through millennia about terror, war, and innocent lives severed and scattered, long before history's first tales began to be told. The remains of a woman with teeth in her pelvis, Catalonia, Spain. The moment archaeologists uncovered the ancient skeleton of a woman near Lida in Catalonia, Spain, a grim curiosity gripped the team, a calcified mass buried within her pelvis. As they carefully examined the remains dating back roughly 1,600 years, the tension intensified. This was no ordinary burial. Hidden in the right side of her pelvis was a spherical tumor, about 4.3 centimeters in diameter, that contained 4 malformed teeth and a small piece of bone. This rare and morbid find would later be identified as an ancient ovarian teratoma, a monstrous tumor known to grow hair, bone, and teeth within a woman's ovary. Eyewitnesses recall the eerie moment the tumor was revealed, a grotesque, miniature mouth frozen in stone, evoking both fascination and horror. The remains were excavated from the Roman-era necropolis of La Foganusa, where the woman had been buried beneath roof tiles arranged like a gabled roof, likely a mark of low social status. Yet her calcified tumor preserved spectacularly against odds, defying time and decay as though the mass had resisted the ravages of millennia with unnatural stubbornness. Researchers from the Autonomous University of Barcelona working there described the find as unique. No other example of such a malignant cyst had been discovered from antiquity in this way. Scientific investigation revealed astonishing details. Known medically as a teratoma, this tumor arises when some cells mutate to form tissues foreign to their location, producing teeth and bone. Though relatively common today, making up about 20% of ovarian tumors, such tumors rarely survive archaeologically because soft tissue decays rapidly. Here, the tumor's calcification preserved microscopic features, including 2 teeth firmly attached to its inner wall, another 2 loose inside, and a tiny section of bone, all deformed and malformed. Radiocarbon dating firmly established the burial as early 5th century AD, during the late Roman period, placing the woman's death in a turbulent era of empire decline and transition. The tumor's size and location suggested she may have endured pain or symptoms, though her exact cause of death remains unclear. Yet the gruesome find deepened the mystery. Why had this woman been buried beneath a roof of tiles with no other grave goods? What roles or hardships had marked her life beyond this sinister tumor? The presence of a teratoma containing teeth challenges assumptions about ancient women's health care and social standing, revealing intimate vulnerabilities buried silently beneath historic bones. How often had such tumors gone unnoticed, their victims forgotten? Stranger still are reports from those who studied the remains. Some conservators spoke of an uncanny feeling when handling the tumor, an invisible weight pressing in, as if the grotesque presence still held unseen power. The mass's calcified teeth seemed to stare back, a chilling reminder that beneath warm flesh lie secrets both biological and spectral, ancient afflictions frozen in time. The Roman woman with teeth in her pelvis stands as a haunting relic of medical oddity, suffering, and survival across the centuries. Her petrified tumor is more than pathology. It is a silent, eerie witness to the human body's strange boundaries and the mysteries death conceals beneath stone and soil in Catalonia's Roman past. 1,000-year-old remains of a young man, Sligo, Ireland. The moment a violent storm tore through Collooney, County Sligo, and uprooted a 215-year-old beech tree, it revealed an unimaginable secret tangled within its roots. The ancient remains of a young man, suspended grotesquely with his upper skeleton lifted and entwined among the chaotic wood, while his legs remained buried in the soil below. This shocking discovery set archaeologists on edge, exposing a violent and unresolved narrative buried for nearly a millennium. Marion Dowd, leading the team from Sligo Leitrim Archaeological Services, described the tension when she first saw the skeleton. Half the body literally dangled in the air trapped within the tree's root system. It was almost surreal. Radiocarbon dating pinned his death between 1030 and 1200 AD, placing him squarely in Ireland's turbulent early medieval period, centuries before the Anglo-Norman invasion. The young man, estimated to be between 17 and 20 years old, stood an impressive 5 feet 10 inches, unusually tall for the time, signaling he likely hailed from a relatively affluent Gaelic family. But the skeleton also told a grim story of violence. Multiple injuries scarred his ribs and left hand, wounds consistent with stabbing blades and defensive strikes, suggesting a brutal attack. The man appeared to have died violently, possibly in a personal dispute or a local conflict, rather than a battlefield. Remarkably, despite these savage injuries, the burial was Christian, with the body laid east-west in a shallow grave, indicating respect and ritual even for a violent death. But why this grave lay alone, with no other skeletons nearby, remains a haunting mystery. Historical records indicate a church and graveyard once existed nearby, but no visible trace remained at the site. Scientific investigation probed deeper. Osteological analysis revealed signs of hard physical labor, spinal injuries consistent with agricultural work, but these injuries were not fatal. The fatal wounds, knife-like and concentrated on the chest and hand, suggest a struggle shortly before death. The partial disarticulation caused by the fallen tree complicated the study, yet the forensic evidence painted a vivid picture of a young man whose life ended in betrayal or regional strife, set against Ireland's shifting political landscape. Stranger still are the eerie echoes surrounding the find. Locals and researchers reported an oppressive stillness descending over the excavation site, shadows flickering near the upturned roots at dusk. Some sensed an unseen presence, as if the violent spirit of the young man lingered, restless and unresolved beneath the earth he was buried in so long ago. Cameras captured unexplained flashes and movements near the grave, raising questions about whether this was simply history disturbed, or something darker awakened. The 1,000-year-old skeleton of the young man from Sligo stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of life amid medieval Ireland's volatility. Who attacked this healthy, tall youth so violently? Was it a personal feud, local war, or ruthless power struggle? And why was he buried alone beneath a tree that would centuries later fall and reveal his tragic secret? The silence of the grave entwined in ancient roots conceals as much as it reveals, leaving behind deep, unanswered questions etched forever into Ireland's dark past. Noble bodies interred with leaden hearts. Rennes, France. In Rennes, France, archaeologists uncovered a remarkable 17th-century burial at the former Jacobin convent site. Noble bodies interred with leaden hearts, emblematic of aristocratic funerary customs of the era. Among approximately 1,380 burials, 5 lead coffins were found, signaling the wealth and status of those entombed. One coffin stood out dramatically. It contained the extraordinarily well-preserved body of Louise de Quengo, a noblewoman who died in 1656, dressed fully in religious attire including a cape, shoes, and a bonnet, her hands clasping a crucifix. What made this discovery chilling and mysterious was that Louise's body was buried alongside a heart-shaped lead urn containing the embalmed heart of her husband, Toussaint de Perrien, who had died 7 years earlier and was buried 200 kilometers away, in a convent he founded. This separation and preservation of a spouse's heart in a different coffin, but within proximity, was a funerary practice of the French nobility during this period, reflecting deep symbolic and emotional ties transcending physical burial locations. Scientific examination revealed extraordinary preservation beyond normal expectations. Louise's skin, hair, some internal organs, and even brain tissue were remarkably intact, providing rare insight into the health, diseases, and embalming techniques of the 17th-century aristocracy. The discovery also challenged assumptions about funerary secularization during this era, as the religious elements and embalmed hearts indicated strong spiritual and social rituals around death and remembrance. The excavation also revealed 4 other 17th-century lead coffins in the convent church choir, with skeletonized but well-preserved remains showing marks of embalming, a prerogative of high status. The convent itself was built in 1369 and served as a burial site for prominent members of Rennes parliamentary aristocracy. The unearthing of hearts in lead urns, some inscribed with names and dates, 1584 to 1655, demonstrated the long-standing custom of heart burial practiced by nobility over nearly a century. Adding an eerie dimension, the unsealing of Louise de Quengo's coffin reportedly sent chills through the archaeologists, sensing a palpable atmosphere of reverence and mystery. Despite modern scientific methods dissecting this unique find, questions remain about the motivations behind the practice, the spiritual significance attributed to the heart separate from the body, and how these customs reflected social status and religious beliefs of the time. Was this a symbol of eternal marital connection, an expression of piety, or a safeguard of legacy through death? The artistic and ritualistic elements, combined with the silent lead coffins beneath Rennes, evoke a lingering aura of noble dignity and unanswered questions about the intimate relationship between love, death, and remembrance during France's early modern period. In summary, the Wren-led coffins and leaden hearts discovery, most famously Louise de Quengo's remarkably preserved corpse alongside her husband's heart, illuminate a chilling and captivating chapter of aristocratic burial in 17th century France. They reveal not only the elaborate care given to noble remains, but also raise unresolved mysteries about the cultural, religious, and emotional practices surrounding death for the nobility of that era. Feel free to leave your comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more mysteries like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.